everybody. Thank you for joining us for the webinar on Gamification of Induction, Building Your Brand Experience in Partnership with Change Inc. This is Bhumika from People Matters, and before moving to the agenda of the day, let me give you a brief of the topic. Induction of employees or their onboarding can be made into a seamless, fun and rewarding experience for both the employee and the organization. In the process, it presents a great way to build the right brand experience for new joiners. Today's webinar, we would be focusing on 4 whats. Firstly, starting with the basics, what do you want to leave the employee with? Second, what can you gamify? Third, what is your content? And fourth, what sort of a platform should you use? Let me now introduce the speakers for this webinar. We are privileged to have with us Tamal Bhatia, founder and CEO, Change Inc. Tamal heads Change Inc., an organization that brings gamification to mainstream people functions. Tamal has 17 years of experience in learning space with over 10,000 hours on game-based learning, apart from holding patents that run changing technology engines today. He has worked with leadership teams of Wipro, Boeing, Walmart, Akamai, to name a few in the past, and is gaming when not at work. We also have with us Payal Nambiar, General Manager HR for Arvind Lifestyle Brands, an HR professional with over 11.5 years of experience in the areas of HR strategy and business partnering. Payal has worked across industries starting with ITES, before moving on to consulting, consumer electronics, and telecom. In her current role at Arvind Lifestyle Brands, she is working in the capacity of a general manager, heading talent acquisition, talent management, employee engagement, and communication. Our partners for today is Change Inc. Change Inc. is a technology company that has gamification and game-based products that provide creative solutions for organizations across a wide variety of HR areas, including talent engagement, learning and driving organizational value. With a SaaS model, Change Inc. drives convenience, accessibility, and usability for their clients through different offerings. Their platforms have been deployed across organizations like RBS, Cognizant, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, Qualcomm, to name a few. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webinar. For those tuned in live to the webinar, you can submit your questions at any time during the presentation through the Q&A section. We will try and respond to as many questions as the time allows. We have a very exciting topic to discuss in this webinar today. So without any further delay, let me invite Tamal to take over. Over to you, Tamal.
Thank you very much, Diksha. Good morning to all our viewers. I have the privilege of having Payal with me at the Changing Studio. So I'm going to give Payal a quick 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm eager to do this webinar, and I'm looking forward to a lot of questions and some thoughts from your side on what we have to offer today.
Okay, so let's roll away and start in right earnest. Please keep flowing your questions, anything that you might have. We'll be happy to take them today, or as we get along, we'll be able to answer them. So primarily, when we look at, the purpose of an induction program, we are looking at helping employees navigate their way in the initial days. And the intent is as important as anything else. If your intent is not right with the induction program and you say that all I need to do is just give them some piece of information which they need to use, the possibility of having a great success is extremely unlikely. Okay. So we are going to look at gamification of induction from the point of view of what do you want to leave the employee with, right? What can you gamify? We typically get a lot of questions around what can you gamify. An important aspect is what is your content and what sort of a platform should you possibly be using for gamification. So what do you want to leave your employee with? And $1 million question that has different answers from each organization. But typically, you would want to look at sometimes excitement and fun. We are a great place to be. We are a reliable bunch. We care. We have a great culture, extremely dependable organization to be a part of. There is a significant amount of growth and learning. These are some of the things that we want to leave our employee with, possibly all of them, because you all recognize the difficulty of attrition. Payal will be talking about that later in much larger detail. But essentially, this is typically what we want to sort of convey, right? So the important parts that we would like to convey with our induction is the core attributes of the people values that the organization has and would like everybody to be a part of. What sort of a culture can one expect? Is it a fun, vibrant culture, or are we a serious set of people who take ourselves very seriously? Chances are you don't want to tell that to anybody, but by and large, we like to talk about the culture. Important aspects as we go along that we have found is what is the expectation? The expectation of what the organization expects and what the employee can expect is typically both there as a part of the induction so that people are tuned into what needs to be done. What is the performance potential? Where can you possibly go? How exciting your role is or how exciting the organization is? Where is it going? Are important aspects that are part of the induction. Functional and role clarity. It doesn't matter whether somebody joins in finance or somebody joins in merchandising, as Payal can talk about, or somebody joins as an IT associate. What is the functional clarity and what is the role clarity that you bring to the table is something that is going to be important and something that you would want to leave the employee with. So plus or minus within these, it could go up and down, but this is like a catch-all typically of the stuff we would want to do, right? So when you look at induction, when you look at any form of information, the world has definitely moved towards, making a story. If you don't have a compelling story, your induction tends to not really do very well because, then it's just another process that you're going through the motions. So you need to leave the employee with a story. We've seen Arvind do a great job of that. We're going to talk about it a little later. That when you enter, hey, this is a great place I want to be. And a great place is not about, these are our policies, these are the things we do, this is how you will get your increment and so on. A great place to be is, what is the story? Every organization has a story and we need to make sure that we bring that story out. Right? So here is the question, and I have answered this many a time and in and around induction and different aspects, but what can you gamify? My question is, what can you not, right? So here is my favorite saying around what can you gamify. If someone tells you it can't be done, it's about their limitation, not yours. Almost everything that you want is possibly gamifiable under the induction umbrella or on any other process that you want to look at. The question is, do you have the will, do you have the desire, do you have the resources, but can you gamify? Yes, yes, and repeatedly yes. Right? So we will specifically look at a scenario of how the induction works so that it gives us an insight into what can possibly be the gamification of induction. Right? So typically there seems to be an approach and a belief system that gamification of anything, an induction in particular, is removal of human intervention. Nothing could be further from the truth, because when you induct people, you want to give them that human intervention. You want them to touch point with people, touch base with people. So the one thing gamification of induction is not, is clearly removal of human intervention. How you supplement that human intervention, how you supplement those interactions is where the play of gamification comes in. So what can you gamify? You can pretty much gamify anything. You can gamify the functional learning, the domain, the role. You can gamify policy, statutory, compliance. You can gamify culture, values, behavior. You can gamify the company information and the way you want to present it. So everything in that sense can seamlessly gamify. You should not have a problem at all, right? So the idea really is that you are able to do all these things if you have a concrete plan and if you have something that you can execute as a story. If you just say, hey, here is our functional stuff, here is our policy stuff, here is our culture stuff, here is our company information, that does not lend itself well to gamification. The story needs to be fairly compelling. You need to build upon that. So if we look at induction gamification design, it essentially has 4 core elements to it. It has outcome. It has what are the elements that are going to go into the entire induction process. What is the content and what sort of engagement do you seek with this entire process, right? So this is essentially a broad spectrum template for induction gamification design. Your induction could be anything from, right? So your induction could be anything from a duration of 6 to 12 weeks. I've rarely seen an induction which is more than that today. You could have 5 to 6 elements, some of the stuff that we talked about earlier: values, functional clarity, compliance, processes, performance, and so on. You could have 2-3 content pieces per week. You could have more, but you could have 2-3 content pieces per week, and that could lead to an engagement on any platform for 3 to 5 times per week. Now, when we look at all these things, sometimes there is a feeling that, everything needs to be on a platform and everything has to happen completely on mobile, online. No, not everything can be possibly online, on mobile, on demand. So it is a supplemental layer that adds to your experience. It is a rare organization that can say that we are able to move everything completely on the mobile, digital, online space. But a broad spectrum, engagement process would look something like this. So what is your content? And I say this repeatedly, and I'm sure Payal will talk about it later. No amount of gamification is going to make your content watchable. It is a very, very, very important part of, looking at how we choose to do things and how we choose to look at our content. Whatever you do, no amount of, I'm saying this 2 times, you have to make your content consumable. I have spoken to people who have given us 45 minutes of PPTs. Nobody is interested in a 45-minute PPT. Nobody wants to watch more than 5 slides, 7 slides maximum. Okay. The average audience span on an AV is down to between 45 seconds and a minute and a half. So unless you are willing to invest on making your content better or making your content more user-friendly, it's not going to be, gamification isn't going to help you. It takes both to do the tango, and you need to move both of them together. So what is your content? I talked about it. I'll rephrase, and you can see the slide as well. It needs to be small, and small is the largest size I have. Tiny and nano, that's something that's going to help you, right? As small as you can, as precise as you can. We are running an experiment in early Jan where we shall be sharing an entire platform for a lot of you to participate. No content piece is more than 60%, 60 seconds. You're not going to do anything for more than 60 seconds. So it's important to be small. The things that really seem to get people going clearly AVs, audio even is still interesting, images. PPTs don't seem to find great traction, to be honest. Just because it's out there on a platform does not make the PPT more interesting, unfortunately, right? And then it needs to be interesting, which is, in some way, even if it is of a significantly boring process, we have to find a way of at least making it interesting. You have to be quick, it has to be accessible, and an all important part, which is social. And when I say social, I don't mean can it be shared on Twitter and Facebook and everything else. There needs to be a social component of engagement that you have. If you don't have a social component of engagement, whom is somebody supposed to say, hey, I'm super excited about this? No one. So there needs to be some form of a social component that people can sort of relate to and get excited with. So important don'ts with your content, please don't cut paste. Just something that really doesn't work at all. Don't put up long PPTs. Nobody is going to read those reams of presentations that you have. There is a reason why the world is moving nano is because attention spans are moving nano. So people want to do something, they want to do it for a short time, they're really not keen on doing it for a very long time. That having been said, not every piece of content can be compressed, but every piece of content can be made interesting. Please do not underestimate the intellectual capacity of the people you intend the content for. Clearly, people you hire and people you bring in come in with a certain intellectual capacity. To dumb it down completely and to make it completely to make it completely dumbed down is going to possibly, so there needs to be a fair mix between making it interesting and making it dumb. One needs to be able to distinguish between the two. So the do's, clearly, keep it small, keep it simple. Make sure that you have challenges, but the challenges should not be made either for the lowest end of the population or the highest end of the population. It needs to be challenging at a broad layer so that it has a larger catch-all. Definitely use the notifications, triggers, nudges to get people to access the platform, to use the gamification motivations to trigger them to say, hey, today, you know what, I'm at the top of the induction class, or in policy induction, I'm in the top 5%, 7%. If you say you close this out today and you are going to be in the top 10 people who have gone through the induction process, something that motivates people, something that pushes people. Please build a story. Look at the story. It doesn't have to be a game board. It doesn't have to be super involved, but at a broad level, why am I here? What am I doing here? What can I hope to get out of this? Is the sort of story that is important and needs to be looked into. So what sort of a platform can we use? What sort of a platform should you use? Again, favorite saying of mine, one man's treasure is another man's junk, right? There is a world of people who love platform X and there is a world of people who hate platform X. So one really is going to need to define in some sense what you want. So you are never going to get, no platform is going to give you everything that you need or you think is important. Now, what happens in any platform that gets designed is a platform gets designed for a wide variety of features. A platform gets designed for saying at a broad level, these are the things we will need. It does not really look into saying this is important for a particular client or XYZ is important for a particular client, because if that is going to be the approach, it's going to be almost impossible to find a platform that meets your requirements. One needs to sort of look at and understand a broad spectrum and then come into the nitty-gritty as opposed to the other way around. So you need to say, I need to do something for induction. This is the broad process of induction. There is content, there is some questions I need to ask, there is gamification will make it interesting, I can do triggers, I can do social. You need to answer some questions at a broad level. Right. So top criteria for platforms, as a general recommendation, would be the ease of administration. So not just the people who are experiencing at the front end. The front end is the easier part because they are experiencing it and you are providing it to them. But if you were to look at the back end of your platform and say, how much time do I need to invest? Is it going to take up so much time of mine that instead of aiding me, it's actually going to take away from my time? Then it's probably not a great platform because you're not going to get endless resources to run a platform, correct? It should be accessible on multiple devices and operating systems, from phones to browsers possibly, because you really never know what is the motivation of people logging in, when are they logging in, and so on, right? It surely needs to be able to provide you fairly easy to operate dashboards, how you can get your information seamlessly, simply, without having to run too many queries or run too many export to Excel kind of scenarios. And in today's world, I think cloud is everything. Pay as you go is going to be the order of the day. So I want to use it for 3 months. I use it for 3 months and I'm done. I want to use it for 6 months. I use it for 6 months and I'm done. You need to sort of be able to have that flexibility because things are changing as rapidly as you and I are talking, so it could go any direction. So you need to have it on cloud, pay as you go, ease. These are the top reasons of what sort of a platform you should be looking at. Okay, I'm going to hand the experience over to Payal. Payal is going to talk about her experience on onboarding in Arvind. It was a complete pleasure. Payal, over to you.
Thanks so much, Tamal, and a big hello to all of you again. For those of you who joined us slightly later, I'm very grateful to People Matters for organizing this webinar, where we're able to co-host this together and to showcase this idea. Our first opportunity was actually with NHRD in a recent HR showcase event, which was organized a couple of weeks ago. And we got actually pretty good feedback on this, and now this is our second opportunity. So the next few slides, or the next few minutes, I'll walk you through what we have at Arvind Lifestyle Brands, which is headquartered out of Bangalore. Just to give you a quick idea, we are an organization about 9,000 employees strong, over 9,000 employees, and our parent company being Arvind Limited. So yes, and we had introduced this concept a few months ago, and we received actually good feedback, not just from people who've gone through this experience, but also those people who have been part of our internal management, our HR team. So it's working very well for us, and which is why it gives me this opportunity to share it with you. Okay. So when we looked at, how the experience had been with Arvind Lifestyle Brands, it's important to understand that this organization, while it's been around for over 2 decades, a lot of people in regions in the north, west, and east are not quite familiar with the company and our portfolio of brands. So if you look at it, we've got about 27 odd brands, which includes licensed as well as our own brands. So the likes of Colt, Karigari, Newport will be our own brands, and our licensed brands is the likes of Arrow, Izod, Gant, Nautica, CK, Aeropostale, and fairly recently with Sephora, which is a little over a year old. So when we had employees, touch base with us and be the first point of connect as part of the talent acquisition process, it became important for them to understand what the company was about, and then take that to the next step in terms of the whole pre-hire onboarding and the onboarding experience. So deliver information which is useful to them, which gets them excited about the company that they are aspiring to join, and also get to know more in terms of the values, the culture that we have here, our average age is 32 years, so we are very young, and that's the kind of dynamism that we want to deliver. So through Change Incorporated, we've been able to look at some of those components, and the whole idea was to create this onboarding experience to something called NEO, which is New Employee Orientation. So this is a much larger story of what we're looking at, which is what Change Incorporated has done for us. Now, when you look at this experience, there is a step-by-step process that we had to look at, and all of this is for us positioning. So we had to look at some fairly basic steps on recruitment processes being okay, then transitioning it to creating brand ambassadors who will talk about the company, and then finally moving on to if the person is excited about it and it is a good to go and thumbs up from our side, we offer him. And that's where it becomes a differentiating factor to try and look at that experience being delightful for any incumbent that's looking to join us. So that is the pre-onboarding experience. So if you see, we try to look at some engaging aspects, so be it through fun quizzes, sharing stories, which can be through skill theater, which is relatively new, so 4 pictures talking about a story or a value, or employee testimonials, leadership videos, and over and above which we're also looking at infographics, all of this content being delivered through an app which Change Incorporated had created for us. So they log in, they go through this seamless experience. It's delightful because it's engaging. It holds the attention of the person for about 30 to 60 seconds, which becomes very important. Tamal had mentioned about that too. And you're creating the right pre-joining touch point for the person to be engaged through his notice period. The next step for us was to look at something which is offline. So all of this that we had created a few months ago was through the online app, mobile app experience with Change Incorporated. But however, we had to move this offline because we wanted to run this as a pilot and then see how that pans out. So our next step now is to truly see that if it's resonating well with people, which it is, then how are we going to deliver this to not just the onboarding day, but to a 30, 60, 90-day milestone for that person. So at every point, you're seeing that the person is engaged on the platform, he is understanding a little bit more about the company, and also the induction mediums, everything is virtual. So when you look at a virtual medium, you're saying that we provide a virtual tour of what stores will be like, we provide a virtual tour of what warehouses is, over and above, being physically present in some of these. And we have the benefit of having all of that just in Bangalore. So we have these large and small format stores for our various retail stores. Quite a few of them have been launched over the course of the years. We have an average of about 200 plus stores that are launched every year, and about 1,200 stores that we have at present. So that becomes an important aspect for us to consider. And not just that, we don't want to leave it with just virtual mediums. It has to be some interactions with our leadership. So we've incorporated, touch points with the HR head, with the CEO and MD, and overall it becomes a holistic aspect for a new person to consider. So through this, we're also looking at, like I mentioned about the 30, 60, 90-day milestone. These are key aspects that you'll see on this slide. This is something that we can look to revolutionize, given that this is the first time that we're actually looking at gamification. So for us to be able to enhance this experience through a technology platform, and it can be through any platform. So if mobile app works for people, we continue with that. If we want to take it through another platform, we go ahead and do that. But gamification keeps them engaged and excited, and that's what becomes important. This is another slide which just talks about how we're looking at engagement of the individual, and it's actually a lead from the previous slide. So if you look at how does the person connect up with various stakeholders, being new in the system, From day one, he is a little nervous, probably a little clueless about, what is expected of him. Can we try and give him that information bite in some way? Yes. And if it's readily accessible, with a click of a button, then what more? And if it also provides, a quick snippet through a quiz where he gets to answer it and feels excited about answering it rightly, then what more? So it can be through understanding of your role, stakeholders, understanding of team, understanding the Arvind culture, and last and most important is understanding the business that the person is going to be, associated with over the coming tenure in the company. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Some of the key learnings I thought we'll quickly pull together a few points. You can take some time and go through this. But the overarching statement is that this has worked well for us. It's our initial journey into gamification, my initial experience personally into gamification. It was a smooth transition that Change Inc. did for us. And we're really looking to take this forward, in the coming months, to not just limiting to pre-onboarding, but taking it to the onboarding day and then finally moving it to post-onboarding, the 30, 60, 90-day first milestone for a new hire. Yes, that's it we had.
Thank you, Payal. Diksha, we're back to you.
Thank you so much, Tamal and Payal, for your great insights. We would now be moving on to questions from our listeners. We have a few set of questions ready with us from our listeners who have been, sharing their questions. I would just start with the first one. How do we ensure that people connect will not loosen when we do gamification?
So I think, let me take that, Payal. So gamification, like I said, and I think I'll go back a few slides, I'm just looking for the slide. Just give me a minute, we will get there. Right. So it's somewhere here. So gamification does not mean loss of people connect. Gamification, on the other hand, right? Gamification, on the other hand, is cementing and increasing the engagement of that people connect. So there is no question of saying that because I am using technology or I'm using a technology platform, is the people connect going to go down? It is a supplemental effort that makes more sense from the people connect perspective. So I'll take an example of what Payal was talking about, that tomorrow there is a warehouse visit that everybody needs to go to, Now this warehouse visit cannot give you an entire perspective of the warehouse. A day is not enough to learn everything about the warehouse. But you are going to be able to say, I went to the warehouse, I connected with the head of the warehouse, when the head of the warehouse is talking to me in a video, and there is some engagement that is going to take place around warehouse practices. That is the essence. So hence it is important to qualify what is gamifiable. Everything is gamifiable, but we are not talking about losing human contact in any way. I don't think Payal would respond to that. Do you look forward to losing human contact, Payal?
Absolutely not. Being an HR professional, I don't think that's the idea or the intent at all. And how it is working for us is that through gamification, areas where you think that you could lose a touch point or you could lose the aspect of interacting with the person on a constant basis, that's where you bring in something of this sort. And through gamification, if it's, say for instance in our example, we brought in this for the pre-hire orientation. So you're trying to look at that person from the time he accepts the offer to the time he actually onboards us. And we don't want to lose the talent by him shopping around and looking for other opportunities. So through that time, we have our team, our administrator of this, who's our onboarding spot, who's in constant touch with the person. But over and above that, you're trying to create that engaging aspect also through a platform like this. So it has to be a handshake between something that is offline and something that is online. You create the differentiator experience through the gamification.
Well said, Payal.
Right. Thank you, Tamal and Payal, for this answer. We'll move on to our next question. What is the social component of the content? This has been asked by Grishma Putran.
So when we say the social component of the content, let me just talk about what we mean by socialization, right? So the social component could be, today it's seamlessly available, easily available, and you can say something like, I am putting this out on Twitter, which is a social component. I'm putting this out on WhatsApp, social component, and a wide variety of social media out there. We are talking about social, saying the social component moves into saying, I liked this particular piece that came to me, so I am recommending it to somebody else within the organization that, hey, this is something you should look at because it's an interesting insight into the company. That is one part of the social component. The other part of the social component that we are operating from is when I am providing somebody with a piece of information, I am also providing him with the ability to talk about that information. So suppose I say I'm saying Arvind values, and I'm taking an example that the Arvind values is coming into play. A guy is able to make a commitment, my commitment to Arvind values. He's able to go as social as that, share it with 5, 7, 10, 20 people within the system. And that is making a difference to his gamification score, because you could say social is the most important component of my gamification, which means every person you share a commitment with is going to add to your game score. And that is a big incentive, because once you are making commitments to people, the chances of your follow through are that much better. Because you typically don't want to look like a fool. Very few people do. You don't want to look like a fool. So when you go social, so for instance, in our engine, the engine itself is configurable. You could say social most important versus accuracy versus feedback versus a variety of other parameters. So I hope that answers that social could be anything from, if the organization allows sharing it on Twitter, which typically we don't recommend, to sharing it on email. There is a wide variety, and there is different kinds of sharing that could take place. I hope, Garima, thank you for that question. I hope that answers your question. So we have a question. Could you share examples of the stories that were shared for Arvind Culture? Payal, over to you.
Yeah. So how we looked at this platform is that the engagement where we talked about various aspects, be it the stories, be it the leadership videos, all of that, that was over a 4-week period. Now, let's take, for example, someone is serving about 6 weeks of notice. So that 4-week timeline of every week, what is the trigger that's going on to his mobile app, through WhatsApp videos, through the game or through the story, that we can determine as to what is the timeline. So it can be every 10 days, it can be every 7 days, depending on the notice. So it can be customized for each person. Having said that, we looked at what are our 5 core values that we have at Arvind Lifestyle Brands. So we follow something called SILK, which is service, innovation, living the brand, collaboration, and care. So when we have these 5 values, simple things like, say for instance, collaboration. We have taken photographs from across the office, and we've got a fairly wide office. So being a young and dynamic organization, some of these would want to tell a story. So through a still theater, 4 pictures telling us the story that collaboration is not just, teams coming together and holding team meetings, but collaboration can be, say for instance, working together in a site location like the cafeteria, or even, say, for instance, team collaboration at an offsite. So these are some of the things that we pull together to talk about collaboration. On innovation and creativity, our backbone is our design team. So we've got about a large, little less than 100 designers. And all of these people work very, very differently. So each of them have, their unique propositions that they bring to the table for each of the brands that they get associated with. So you're looking at that story being delivered through, say, for instance, the work. We have, wine and fashion forum. Through that forum, we organize events. All of these are captured through not just employee testimonials, but also through still photography. I hope that answers that question.
Thank you, Payal, for your answer. We will now move on to our next question. It is from Arlene. She wants to know, do we have gamification packages? What is the approximate cost of a gamification package, and is there a license cost involved as well?
So I can only share my experience with you, Arlene. There are all kinds of costs that can be associated with it, but what you should be really looking at is only a license on a per person cost. So you should not be ideally needing to pay any other kind of cost, or if that cost should be there, it should be very, very minimal. So a good cloud platform would say my setup cost is bare minimum because I'm not setting up in your premises, I'm setting it up on the cloud, and then there is a license cost on a per person basis. Now, license cost on a per person basis varies on a wide variety of parameters, which include the amount of content that you have, the kind of gamification that you want, but cost could go anywhere from 60 rupees per person per month, all the way up to 200 rupees per person per month, depending on what is getting gamified and how much of content, etc., is being put out there. I can send you a more detailed note on that, Arlene. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamal, for your answer. We would move on to our next question. Can you share the kind of gamified design you have implemented at Arvind for NEO? Did you have a particular theme?
So I think Payal talked about that theme already. So the overall game theme was around their silk philosophy, right? Which is the core value of their brand, that the core value of the Arvind experience, right? And primarily the entire process was worked around saying, how can we provide these people with stories and snippets that enables them to understand this entire silk model that works at Arvind. So if I look at it, I'll hand it over to Payal in a second to talk about it more. But from the stories, so these are an amalgamation of stories. So the storyboard is an amalgamation of what we value. So the essential theme is what we value at Arvind, so that encompasses Arvind Cares, a day at Arvind, why am I excited to be a part of Arvind. So a wide variety of small story themes building into the larger theme of what does it mean to be at Arvind, and I'm going to give it to Payal to answer the other parts of that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tamal. So just to add on a couple of more points only, I think most of it Tamal had already covered. So it was the values, but we were also looking at the larger picture of the culture that people needed to understand within the organization. So it's young, it's vibrant, it's dynamic, it's got a level playing field. People are excited to join because they don't just have roles that they sign up for, but they sign up for a career, and that was important for aspirants who are looking to join us to understand. The culture, the values comes in as a sub-segment in that, and like Tamal had rightfully pointed out, we had carved out stories for each one of the engagement weeks. So week 1 will be what does Arvind stand for, week 2 will be, do you know enough about the company, so, these are the different brands, this is the revenue size, this is the target audience we're looking at for menswear, womenswear, all of that. So that is the story that we were looking to deliver. And finally ending with the last week on employee testimonials and leadership testimonials, saying that this is what we have to offer. We're excited to have you join us. And we closed that with them onboarding the very next day.
Yes, Diksha. I hope that answered at a high level at least.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Payal and Tamal, for this answer. So, in continuation only, we have our next question. John wants to know, did Arvind Lifestyle have any leaders on board for their gamification process?
Yes, I'm not sure what we mean by leaders, but yes, we had the HR team work on this, the onboarding team. So, my team and me, we spearheaded this, worked on creating this with changing, and that was part of the core team. And this wouldn't have been possible without, tremendous support and guidance from our CEO and MD, Suresh J, and from Shilpa Ved, who is our CHRO.
If I might add to that, if you, I don't know how Payal may or may not be able to share the content, but you can find every leader in the entire storyboard participating to talk about what does it mean to be in Arvind. So we have from the CEO talking about what it means to the last mile, the brand heads talking about what it means to be. So a significant investment from different constituents of the organization to make it work, and understanding that, hey, this adds that X factor, So yes, people are going to join, people are going to come, people are going to talk, but we are able to engage them over and beyond what is traditionally being done. And that, yes, to answer that question from John, there was significant time and effort from others as well.
Yes, Tamal.
Thank you, Payal and Tamal. That has been very correctly put. With this, I would move on to our next question by Sheikh Faisal. His question is, how do we ensure people go through the gamification model? Should we make it a mandate? We do pre-joining gamification. However, the number of participants are very less.
So, Sheikh, no gamification eschews anything being mandated. So if you say I am mandating something, especially at a pre-boarding layer, it as it is raises the hackles of a person saying, what kind of an organization am I getting into that they are forcing me to do stuff even before I am joining. You have to have the story right, you have to have your content right, your appeal has to be to the various motivations that gamification addresses. If the motivations of people are not addressed, gamification is unlikely to work. Gamification is unlikely to work if your content is boring. Gamification is unlikely to work if you don't have a compelling story. So my sense would be that you need to visit the drawing board to really say, what is the experience I want to leave them with, which is something I talked about at the very beginning, right? And when they come in, what is going to be similar to the experience that I'm providing them, right? If you don't provide them with a similar seamless experience, then they will say all this is a farce and they really will not participate even later. So you need to think this through. My sense would be a good compelling story, content that is interesting, should see decent numbers on how people view various processes and onboarding and pre-boarding and so on. Yeah, thank you for the question. Diksha, back to you.
Right, thank you, Tamal. We now have a question from Gauri Vadera. She would want more insights on typical cost model.
So cost models are difficult to talk about right now, Gauri, because one needs to understand what needs to be done, right? But like I said, in principle, models are around subscription, number of users on the platform. If there isn't any serious tweaking to be done and the content is fairly consumable on the platform, then there are no additional costs typically. Anybody would have a small one-time cost depending on how one wants to view. So there are people who want what is called a private cloud solution, where you say, I don't want anybody else to reside in my server area. Those typically tend to cost a little more versus what we have something like running at Arvind, which is on the public cloud. So there are no additional costs associated with it. But it is very, very difficult to talk about cost without understanding either the numbers or the quantum of content and the duration in which something like this needs to run. I'll be happy to have somebody from my team reach out to you offline to take this forward.
Yes, I think that would definitely help, Gauri. With this, thank you, Tamal. We'll move to the next question. How is the effectiveness measured post the induction process? Is it through the same process or there are different measures taken?
So I'll take that one up. Yes, we have to look at a couple of measures, and we're not just stopping with that, we're looking at enhancing the way in which we measure our ROI. So we started with the offer drop rate. which has shown a significant decrease. And not just offer drops, we are also looking at the impact on, say for instance, an industry like ours. So retail industry in any case has some bit of churn, and attrition was our key metric to evaluate. So what got us thinking about this whole idea of creating the engagement was on the infant or the early attrition that happens in the 0 to 6 and 0 to 12 months. So that we saw over a 50% decrease, over the period in which we had started using this. We are looking at more direct measures in which we can evaluate it so that it will be a stronghold for us to look at this proposal going forward for onboarding and later.
So I would like to take a small piece from Payal on that one. So today, if you say I am using traditional conventional means, there are 2-3 things that one needs to understand. One is, what sort of data am I getting? What sort of an understanding do I have of consumption patterns? What are people looking at? What are not looking at? Right. So if you say that there is a certain X percentage that you are currently getting, and you are even able to double that, that's a significant measure of effectiveness. But the more important part, I think Payal has addressed, is there is a requirement of a mix of metrics. One is, of course, the business metrics. And the other metric that I would look at is, what is the cost of not doing this? So when you do the ROI, if you say, I don't do anything like this, there is no apparent cost, but when you total it up as to what is the opportunity cost lost in engaging with these people, you would find a significant, commercial number that you can put down to that. I hope that answers the question. Back to you, Diksha.
Right. Thank you, Tamal and Payal, for this answer. Now, our next question is regards to question number 1 that we have taken up. How do we ensure people connect? So, for this, referring to this question, Gaurav Vaishnav wants to know, which aspects of induction have you, both Tamal and Payal, this question is being directed to you both, have you kept in person to maintain the human touch, and which one did you plan to gamify and why?
Okay, so let me begin and then Tamal can add on. So for us, it is a phased approach that we're looking at. The first phase for us was creating the engagement pre-onboarding, like I mentioned during my presentation. But that doesn't stop just there. We want to look at also the onboarding day, the day in which they join the organization, and the journey of when they're looking to get assimilated into the company. And critically, that gets seen as a 90-day milestone. So we've begun with this, and we will move on to onboarding and the 90-day milestone. So essentially, our idea was to look at early attrition and infant attrition, and naturally, this can be taken to a whole new level in which we look at ROI, with reduced training costs, with the person being associated with the company for a longer period, reduced recruitment costs, the whole pain of losing someone and rehiring, all of that can be metricized and put into an increased ROI.
So I think, my answer to that would be, we are a gamification platform company. We are today talking about gamification of different aspects. So in that sense, we are content agnostic. We have gamified every piece of content that we have put out there. We have gamified the combined pieces of content put out there, and we have a gamification output. So the gamification is running on an engine. That having been said, my sense is that when we end this process, maybe in 3 months or so, and we look at the complete data, the parts that we are going to see where gamification has really worked well is the socialization aspect. Every batch has about 25-30 people. You have 25-30 people who will want to know how am I doing within my batch. It's not competition, but it's just gently nudging people to say, hey, you know what, I am in the top 10 percentile, or am I in the top 58th percentile? Or someday somebody saying, you know what, you guys all might have done very well in accuracy, but the whole world knows me because I have shared what I have to share with a wide variety of people. So the choices of what one chooses to gamify there are many, but my sense would be gamification works at multiple layers, and one must try to address different layers that attract people, because some people are attracted by wanting to be the topper versus some people are attracted to say that I am Mr. Popular. They are two different things altogether. I hope that answers that question. Thank you, Gaurav. That was a good question again. Over to you, Diksha.
Right, thank you, Tamal and Payal. Now we are almost out of time, so I would be taking up one last question, and the remaining would be answered by Payal and Tamal offline. So I'll move on to the last question from Benazir. She says that in the BPO industry, it is going to be challenging to have a follow-up of 60 to 90-day plan for induction, considering the attrition. What would you recommend for such a situation?
Correct, yes. So that's a very good question actually. So our first thought to piloting this was to look at our corporate workforce. That's a relatively smaller group of people, and we can always test, try and see how things are working out before we take it to the retail team where the attrition numbers are much higher. So the idea was to start it off with corporate and then move on to retail.
So I think also taking on from what Payal said, one is for the retail induction, they might not see the detailed induction that the corporate sees of a 90-day. The retail induction, because
yes,
is a much smaller. So Benazir, my sense is that when you are not able to do and you don't have a predictability, there are some things that you can say I can churn out and close my process in 2 weeks. Right? The rest of the things remain a work in progress. So stuff like policy, values, company information, all the generic stuff that people need to know does not have to run in the 30, 60, 90-day paradigm. It is all the other more functional aspects that run that long. So while you could have everything going, but at least the core of your induction process of everything that has got to do with company and not necessarily process and role is closed and done in a number of days you think is acceptable to you. So that number of days could be 7, that number of days could be 10, that number of days could be 15, but that is something you could look at.
Yeah.
I hope that.
Yeah, so sorry, just to add, it's something that we will need to customize
Correct.
for this audience. So we're not going to work with the same module like Tamal was saying. We'll have to customize for the retail audience for the simple reason that their demographics, hiring parameters are slightly different. Diksha, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Payal and Tamal. I think this helps Benazir. Now, with this question and answer session, we would be wrapping up our today's webinar, and we would like to thank our webinar partners, Change Inc. Special thank you to Tamal and Payal for this webinar and the invaluable information that they have shared with us today. I would also like to thank everybody in the webinar audience for participating in today's presentation. Stay tuned for many more such exciting sessions. Concluding our today's webcast, thank you so much and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you again. It was our pleasure.